Hey, everybody, and welcome to another week of Crunching Your Growth. Happy to have you here. And tonight we have Jay Melone, who is on a mission to help 100,000 service-based business owners build profitable businesses without being swallowed by their own company or burning out. And what his whole philosophy is that you have to productize your offering. Right. And when you think about it, when you hear what he has to say, it makes sense. But as a marketer and as someone who has an agency, I was talking to him about this before. I think that there's a lot of service businesses, SaaS products that don't really get the understanding of productizing your offer. And that enables you to market and handle your marketing a little bit differently. You know, he's an entrepreneur. He had a marketing business for number of years, 7 years, I think he said. And he just was in the hamster wheel, just moving along, trying to get it going. And, just back and forth. And he wasn't achieving what he wanted to achieve. So that's when he had the revelation to start this other piece. And so we're going to hear what he has to say. I think it'll be good, especially for you guys that are coaches or you guys that are consultants. A lot of times you just think, hey, I'm a coach. People are going to look at my background and they're going to say, oh, I'm going to hire this guy, when you really have to go after them with a product, just like you would a physical product or, any other product. So I think when you do it and when you think about it and when you hear what he has to say, it's going to make sense on how you market. So let's bring him in and let's hear what he has to say. Jay.
Hey, Phil.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
My pleasure. So I went into your background a little bit, but it'd be great if we could hear from you, sort of your, what you started with, how you started, a little bit about your background, and then what got you to your revelation and your new business.
Yeah, it's a slog. So strap in. It started 15 years ago. I heard you say 7. So 15 years ago, I decided to not clean up my resume one more time and to try my hand at building a business. Probably in my blood. Grandpa owned a shoe repair business in Verona, New Jersey. My dad still owns a business 40 years in, selling nuts and bolts to pump manufacturers and just people that make big products. My mom owned a court reporting school for, I think, close to 20 years. So I started in the corporate world, and I worked at Accenture for 7 years, which is 6 years and 10 months longer than an ex-girlfriend's dad said I'd last there. Accenture, they're going to chew you up and spit you out. I was like, I'll show you. So I killed myself working there. 7-day work weeks, 100-hour weeks. Good work ethic, but probably could have done with a little bit more nights and weekends to myself.
Yeah.
And then I got a couple jobs in Manhattan but I was in technology my whole career. And my last job, I got fired from the first job in Manhattan, got another job in Manhattan, got fired from that when the housing market crisis hit. But I also think I was becoming quite unemployable. I had this vision of how I wanted to build a company, which turns out when you're not the owner and the CEO, and you're telling them what to do, that doesn't always work out too great.
No, I hear you.
So I for a little while I contracted. I did some product management work for a garage that had technology all through different parking garages in the city, and it kind of allowed me to dip my toe in the water. So right away for the person that's about to make that leap, contracting or freelancing for me felt like a good middle ground. It just started to help me understand what it's like to have to resell yourself over and over again. So instead of waiting for a promotion or leaving a company after a couple of years, 5 years, and then having to go through the interview process, those contract cycles teach you how to make yourself marketable. So I did that. But I only did it once, because then right as I went through that process was when my first company kicked off. And the name of the business was New Haircut. And kind of piggybacking on what you said, we started as a web design company. We built websites and pitch decks for startups and mobile apps and anything that any company asked us to do so that we could remain in business for the first 5 years. Working with, cash-strapped startups because that's all that would, trust us to do what we did. And over time, we got better at it. We had at a point we were 5 employees when we got started. We grew eventually to a 35-person business, but I was the only guy in the States, and most of our clients were in the States. So I became the guy responsible for sales by default.
Right.
And so it sounds kind of silly to say this, but when you go into business, nobody teaches you. You go into business to do the thing that you want to do some work, to create something, to help a customer, to solve a problem that you found in the world, something that you experienced, something that you helped somebody else fix. And you think just because you're passionate about it, that everyone's just going to line up and hire you.
Yeah.
But news alert, you have to actually get out there and continually market it and sell.
Sure.
And so as we grew and started selling from startups, eventually about year 7 and 8, we started to sell to companies like MailChimp, Ford, Home Depot, Amazon, Google, great companies. But those sales cycles, they're brutal, like 18 months, 2 years of meeting a person, they leave the company, they might introduce you to somebody on their way out. You get really far along with the pitch process only to have to start over again because all your points of contact left. And so I, like you called it, the hamster wheel. I rode that roller coaster for a new haircut just constantly, pitching, building proposals, sitting in pitch meetings, prospecting for new leads, prospecting for new clients within companies we were already selling to. And I'm an engineer, so I wanted to roll up my sleeves and do the work with my team. And I'd say about like 25 to 30% of the time I got to do that. Otherwise, I was out there pitching, marketing, selling, all self-taught. So also kind of intimidating when you're not formally trained in how to do those things. And that lasted for a good 10 years. And probably a couple years before then, going through that process over and over again, I didn't call it burnout at the time, but I was just feeling tired. I was feeling run down. The lure and sort of the novelty of being a business owner for the first few years was completely gone. Now it was just, I basically had invented a job for myself, except this job paid me a quarter of what my peers in corporate America were making, which didn't seem right at all. And so I just kind of but I just plowed through it because I didn't really have a different playbook when it came to growing the business. It was just cold emails, cold DMs on LinkedIn, spam people as much as you can, go through your network, ask, how can I get into this company? Who do you know? And that's definitely not me. I learned a long time ago. There are the hunters and farmers. I'm definitely much more of a farmer. I want to create things that help people and demonstrate our capabilities so that when they're ready to hire us, that, we become the company of choice. But I didn't know how to, other than go on to webinars and create blog articles and maybe post some stuff on LinkedIn and Twitter. I really didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And it was about back in 2020 when I first had this sort of lightning bolt moment of this whole conversation we're going to have about productizing.
Well, I can understand your frustration. I mean, I've been doing this. I never set out to build an agency. I was an entrepreneur. I built businesses. I built brands. We sort of backed into an agency because we were asked to do something for one of our partners in one of the brands that we built. And they needed help understanding direct to consumer and building websites and things like that. And we wound up doing that. I was doing it as a temporary piece after we sold one of the brands, and we wound up just continually building it. So, but I can understand the frustration because even when you're a consultant or somebody who's just a single person going out there and looking for the next gig, you still have to sell yourself. You still have to go out and do the research, still have to make the contacts. And I understand it's a grind.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that doesn't even account for all the times that you do the research, you get in the call with the person and they don't show, or they delay the meeting 3 times for 2 months. And then you get in the call and you realize that they're just kicking the tires, or that they're 3 levels away from anyone that has budget to hire you. So learning about like who your actual buyer is a whole lesson in sales that I was not privy to. And then even so, they might say yes, or they get curious based on your proposal. And then their job as your champion is to go and sell it to their boss's boss. And that's probably another 6 months, and they disappear, and you're sending them all these follow-up emails and checking in and all the things you're not supposed to do. But it's all chasing. And if you've got like a gentle ego, I guess, like I do, that stuff, it's just, I think what happened for me is I started to entrain myself that what I was selling was not of value, because if my close rate, which is below industry average, it was like 20%, 20%. I think industry average in services, maybe closer to 30 or something. It felt like I was preaching to the wrong choir, I suppose. So a lot of no's, a lot of ghosted proposals that I spent weeks on, hours and weeks on. And so the idea that I had was, it kind of went in a couple phases. The work that we were doing, just really quickly, was strategy work for these big enterprise companies. So they'd come to us and they'd say, Jay, we're looking to go into market with this product or service. Before we invest $1 million in it, or however much money, and we get all these people together and these teams, and we hire people, help us figure out if this is the right bet to put on our roadmap. So we'd come in with our bag of tricks. We would do a bunch of research in their market. We would build prototypes. We would test the ideas. We'd validate some parts, invalidate others, make a lot of iterations and pivots. And eventually we go back to them. Average project was 3 to 6 months, super intense, lots of work, lots of very performative, important decisions being made by executives. So, like high stakes kind of stuff, with me in the center of the room negotiating a lot of this stuff, but trying to remain neutral and help them pick the right decision versus pick something that was, the highest paid person in the room's pet project. So eventually we go back to them and say, you want to build this, not that. And for that work, we charge anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. So high ticket, long sales cycles. And we started asking ourselves, okay, so if this stuff it's risky to buy, you need to vet it a whole bunch, you need to get multiple approvals, the whole cycle itself is many, many months. How could we make that simpler for ourselves? So the first answer that we came up with was, okay, instead of us doing this, let's teach people how we do what we do, because we get questions about it. How do you do that? How do you do research? How do you build the prototypes? What do you do to make sure you build the right prototype, not the wrong one? How do you connect the research to the outcomes that you guys come up with? So all these questions are on our processes and frameworks. So if there's interest in this, let's teach it. So what we wound up doing is filling rooms of people that would pay us $1,000 a seat to come and learn all of our methodologies. And those things, people would go onto our website, buy a ticket in minutes. I didn't even know they were, until I got an email notification. I didn't see them going through that buying journey, which I was sweating through for months beforehand. Now they're buying a ticket for $1,000, and we've got 30 people in the room. We just made 30 grand for a workshop that we ran in 2 days. We had to build the curriculum. It took us weeks to get the first trainings built. Then we learned what we learned. We made it better. We created the next training, got better and better at that whole process. But now our profits went way up in terms of 1 or 2 people jumping into a training workshop and making 5 figures from it. So that was seems very obvious. A lot of people don't like the idea of training. They think it cheapens their work. They look at it as like, I'm an expert in what I do, and it's taken me decades to learn this, and it takes me weeks or months to deliver that thing. I can't teach anyone all of that stuff in a day or 2 days. And that's not what we promised either. We just said, hey, we're going to give you everything that we know about this thing. We've packaged it in a couple of days, and we're going to give you some resources. it lasts 2 days. Here's when lunch is. Here's what the agenda looks like. Here's the resources that you get at the end of it. Here's how much it costs. So we had packaged our expertise into something that was much easier to buy. Easier to buy, very easy to fulfill compared to our sort of like core consulting work that we did. So that was like first pass of going from what I would call active income-based services, where you're trading time for money, to something that's much more packaged.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I, I think that there are a lot of people out there who want to go and run workshops and teach people and train people. I think it gets muckied up, in my opinion, from what I see. It gets muckied up with the less than ethical people. And I'll give you an example. In my world, there's probably 6 million people running workshops about how to sell on Amazon, and they all focus on, you're going to become a millionaire in a month. And that's just, and they teach outdated garbage, and they make false claims and false promises. And so when you actually go out there and say, here's a program on how you're going to sell on Amazon, for example, people are always skeptical about it. And they've also diminished the cost of it to the point where, it's not even worth doing. So,
yeah. I hear it all the time, especially because as the story evolves from package to productized stuff, in the online courses world, it's even worse because you've got kids, 20 somethings. I'm not picking on an age group, but like a lot of these like hustle bro type guys will take over a weekend course on futures index trading and then go and create a course on it the next day, which is okay, because in some sense, because you're helping a previous version of yourself. I learned this thing, here's what I learned. But there's a spectrum of humility to it, and a level setting of expectations, and honesty. Like, I took this course, here's 10 things that I learned from it. And the first time you do it, it's free. I just want to like share what I learned. I'm building another course based on a couple other things that I'm learning. And that one's I'm going to charge for that. So if you're interested, I'll release it in a month or two, please follow along. That's a story. It doesn't sound snake oily, because it's not. You're being, very candid about what you're teaching people. And then when you're 10 years in to trading of whatever sort, or whatever your whatever poison it is that you're an expert in, now you can start to demonstrate that expertise. You've got case studies of people that have been through your courses. You've got like your ability to promise people to get further down the road is more proven, and so you can stand behind that. But there's so many, what's the word, shucksters? I don't know if is that the word I'm looking for? There's just people that way over promise and under deliver, and it's disappointing, because anyone especially coaches really struggle with teaching, because it's such an intimate relationship they have with their coaching clients. And to imagine that they're going to take a modality from their practice and package it up and give it to somebody and they're not there in the room with them, they really struggle with that. And then I asked them, a previous coach of mine, when I met him, he was charging $500 an hour. By the time we were done, for other clients, not me, I got friends and family or something, he was at $2,000 an hour. He's coaching like the board at Porsche and whatnot. And his thing was, the light bulb went off for him when he said, there's a very small percentage of people that can afford me, and yet I know I'm transformative in these people's lives. So I want to be able to help the people that can't afford me. And that's where taking parts of what you're good at, of what you've helped other people do, and packaging it in a way that it's much more affordable and accessible to those people, that's where productizing can come in, which is the opposite of snake oily.
Yeah, I get frustrated with the pitches I get. I got one the other day, and it just rubbed me the wrong way, because this person sent me an email on LinkedIn, totally had the wrong targets in his outreach, but sent me an email and told me that he could get my products on the first page of search in Amazon, and he can guarantee it, or I don't pay. And I looked at him and I looked at his background, and the guy was in school 2 years ago, graduated college 2 years ago. I don't see where he has any experience selling on Amazon. I've been selling on Amazon since 2006. I would never tell a brand or anybody that I could guarantee you that I could get you on page, because I can't guarantee that. And to me, he's everything that's wrong with people selling. And he wasn't really productizing. He was just pushing out, like you said, he's somebody who took a course, learned something, and now he's going to come out there with this bold statement. And I can't stand it when it happens. But you're right. I mean, I know a lot of coaches. I know a lot of good coaches. I know a lot of people that do some really good things. A lot of them on the human resource side, a lot of them on resource planning, things like that, marketing, and they do a very good job. And their approach is totally, like you said, it's just not snake oily. It's, I'm going to give you something, and I'm going to give it to you for free. And my story is, this is what I learned. And now if you want more, come over here and we can talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I agree with you. It's a much, much better, much less sleazy approach.
Right. Yeah. And, like, transparently, I was trying to solve a couple problems for myself. I was at a point that service that I did for large companies, I had worn myself thin. I skipped a part of the story where in years 11 and 12, went through a divorce, house fire. My business partner and I separated, took two different companies that we had built and sort of split them apart. And then I was left from a 35-person company to a company of me. So 20 people billable for the company to just Jay that's out there selling the work and doing the work. And I looked at this thing and I was like, okay, if I'm going to rebuild this, there is no option for me to just go off and sell for a while and hope that somebody else in the company is writing some code or building some websites and making some money for us. So I had to find a way to balance both. And I knew that if I got back on that hamster wheel of marketing and selling, within months, I would have been done, both emotionally, because it was just the moment had passed. My love for the company had passed, but I knew I had a machine here. When we did the work, we had great referrals from people. There was always like a great outcome. We helped Rosetta Stone launch a flagship course that taught English language learning to students in K through 12, became their flagship product. We got to go into schools and test that. With sitting with families and the kids to watch them learn language for the first time. It was like really cool stories, really cool work that we got to do, but I just couldn't get back on that train of marketing and selling. So I'm like, I had to fix that problem. I had to make my job of marketing and selling easier. But then because I had passed the point where a lot of entrepreneurs don't get to, because I was at burnout, I was trying to package what I knew about the work that I did and say, like, please don't hire me, but don't pay me 5 figures to do this work. Spend $200 to have everything I've got. So I went beyond teaching. So when I started to productize, I went beyond educating and into enabling my clients. And I said, listen, there's 30 videos in here that step you through the whole framework and how I do it and all of the resources that I use. So if you were to hire me, everything in my bag of tricks that I use to do my job is in this toolkit, and you have complete access to it. It's yours, lifetime, and you can have it for $200. So I was making my job of marketing and selling easier. It was when it started to work, it was very much on autopilot. And then I was also trying to make the work that I did much more consumable and easier to buy. And because of that, because I put those tools in my prospective clients' hands, they got their own wins. So what happened was this sort of like new light bulb moment went off for me where I was like, I'll just turn into a product company. I'll just start selling these toolkits and that'll be a different business that I'm running. But what happened was people started to use the toolkits and then they went back to their boss and said, hey, I just used this thing from New Haircut. This project we have coming up, got to hire these guys. They clearly know what they're doing. They're pros. So now my phone started ringing again, which I didn't really want to be the case. But that was that lightning bolt moment. So we sold over a few years of building those, I called them toolkits. That was like our productized version of the consulting work. We sold 80 grand worth of toolkits, which you can't run a business on $80,000 over 3 years. But those toolkits, because I wasn't marketing and selling, they sold $900,000 worth of consulting work over that time. So I was like, aha, okay, got it. That, if you've heard, I love that book, Building the Flywheel or something like that. Yeah. I love that metaphor about this flywheel. So the toolkits were out there selling for me. As people use them, shortened sales cycles, demonstrated value, quickly became customers of either my training workshops or my consulting work. And that just ran on autopilot. So very much to the point where the last time I worked on the toolkits was 4 years ago. And I still wake up today to people downloading them and buying them. And I actually started another business in the process. So new haircut, I've kind of like shoved it out of my purview, and people are still finding it and using it because of that flywheel that I built.
Yeah, I mean, that's a smart way of going about it. I think that sometimes, you know, it's difficult. One of the mistakes I made in my first business that I ever started when I was 27, it was a total disaster. And the reason it was a disaster was because, I mean, we had sales, we had profit, but it was just a disaster for me personally because I was working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. And it was a retail store, it was a food retail store. And I had grown up in the restaurant business, and I thought that that was going to be my path in life, but I didn't want to open a restaurant because it's just not a good lifestyle. So I built this food store, but the problem I had was I didn't do a very good job of teaching other people the skill set that I had. I didn't do a good job of transferring knowledge. I didn't do a good job of leading. I didn't do a good job of managing process. And so I wound up just burning out, and after 3 years, and I wound up selling the business. And it was one of the happiest days of my life when I just signed that paper, because I felt like this albatross was lifted off me.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the money and I went, that's what got me down to Maryland. And I went to graduate school, and I didn't go to graduate school because I thought that was going to solve my problems. I went to graduate school because I thought I needed to think differently about business and about other things, which it did help me. And I wound up getting involved with a retail company similar to what I had built, but with multiple stores and more professional leadership. And then I started to understand what I did wrong. And still to this day, I carry with me because, like I have a marketing agency. I have people that have been with me a long time, and I don't want to do the work every day. I can't. I just don't want to. Sure, I can sit there and build your Amazon store and get you, scalability. I can build your ads. I don't want to. So I've had to teach everybody in the company what I know about how to do different things. And my job is obviously more outreach and customer interface. But it's hard to come to that realization that you have to sort of figure out a way to get your knowledge base built so that people can benefit from it, whether it's internally or externally.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about the free stuff, right? So like like that first domino that you're trying to, or what I've called like a wedge product, like the thing that you're trying to get people in the door.
Sure.
They're at that early stage of the buying journey. They're probably not ready to buy your whatever you're consulting or coaching. I really don't like when people call it a tripwire. That's giving it all the wrong framing. That's working against, that's counterintuitive. But getting people in the door, and the tricky thing is you're making it free. And what you're trying to do is minimize time to value for that client. You're trying to like demonstrate right away, this is the promise on the box, and I'm going to give it to you in this short, very like consumable, easy to use format. And so where I got tripped up at first is, okay, I do $50,000 work. I've got a few things that I've like started to build this flywheel, and now I want to start to layer in some free stuff up front.
Right.
So the first free things that I created, I made really shitty. I said the mindset I had was, I'm going to hold back, because if they want my best stuff, they got to pay for that. And now I think about that completely in reverse. So now I very much think you give away your best stuff because you and I feel like we've been doing what we do for 20 years, 30 years, however long. It's a big world, and there's going to be a lot of people that take a look, thumb through it, watch the first few videos, start to use the template, and then what goes off in their head is, I'm just going to hire Phil.
You know, again, I'm going to relate this to doing startups. When we were building a company and we needed to go out looking for capital, and you have your business plan and you do everything, and usually we got up and running and we had proven the model and proven the product and all that. And I had a partner in one of the businesses, and we were going to meet with some pretty high powered investors. And he's like, "Oh, we got to get him to sign an NDA." I said, "For what?" He said, "Steal the idea." I said, nobody's ever going to steal the idea. I don't care what you tell people. I can sit here with you and I can tell you exactly what I know about how to scale a company. Okay. And I could put that in 10 videos. I can give you a step by step, and you may watch it and you may get a couple of things out of it, but you are never going to be able to execute it. And it's the same thing with when you're going out, because we deal with this. I mentor young entrepreneurs, and they're the first ones to come out with an NDA. And the reason they do that is because they took a course, or they talked to somebody who's like, "Oh, you have to have an NDA." If I'm an investor and you come in with an NDA, I immediately discount you as a child. I think you don't know what you're doing, because I'll sign your NDA, but it's just amateur. And what I learned was nobody can execute what you do. You can tell them exactly what you're going to do, but it's like Larry Bird when he used to play for the Celtics. He would get on the floor, right? He'd go up to Magic Johnson. He'd tell him exactly what he was going to do, the shot he was going to take, and he would go and do it. And they still couldn't stop him because they don't know how to execute what he was going to execute, right? Or how to defend against what he was executing. So I agree with you. You give them your best stuff because you put your best foot forward. That's what's getting them interested in you. And that's what's going to get them interested in hiring you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I say no to 10 of my own ideas a day. What are the odds I'm going to listen to your idea and go and chase that thing? Yeah. It's like every time I see like stealth startup under someone's title on LinkedIn, I cringe. I'm like, there's definitely some instances where legally and blah, 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 there's reasons that you have to remain quiet about something, but most of the time it's just hype. And so this is the whole thing about what we're talking about here. The overdoing the hype cycle to launch a course that took you a few hours to build, that you learned about the weekend before. That's the whole thing that like I'm working actively to fix and disrupt. So the people I work with, college professors, people that work in the CIA, consultants that do work for the Department of Defense, like these are real experts that have been doing their craft for a really long time. And so they have all these objections at first. What if it cheapens my work? I don't know how to build online products. What if somebody uses it and then decides they're not going to hire me? So there is that train of thought is persistent in a lot of people's minds. So I'm actively trying to demonstrate to them that whatever we build, we're going to promise what's inside the box. We're not going to over promise anything. There's no miracles here. There's no overnight success, but this is giving them just a slice of your expertise. And everybody knows that. It's the same reason when somebody buys a book, they know that they're getting a couple years worth of that person going and researching the topic. They're not getting that. That person's not moving into their bedroom and hanging out with them and shadowing them, right? And but when we're in the driver's seat building the product, we just assume that the market is going to put us on equal footing. The course that we built versus 20 years of our expertise. And so I have to constantly teach people that's not what we're giving them. That's not what we're promising them.
Yeah.
And if you do want to promise that, and if you are looking for 10,000 monthly recurring revenue in the first 2 weeks that you launch the thing, then I'm not your guy, because this is like This is a flywheel that you're building. This is a funnel of demonstrating your expertise, helping one person go from step one to step two until they're ready to take the next step.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right on. I mean, we get the same, even though I'm not selling. I mean, we are selling services, but we're also executing those services, right? We're not just selling sort of consulting, or we're actually going in and doing the work and getting the results. But we get brands. I mean, we're not dealing with small companies. I mean, these are companies that are anywhere north of 50 million to, in some cases, $1 billion or more. And the expectation of what they think is going to happen is amazing to me. We always have to bring them down to reality and say, if you have somebody who's telling you that they're going to get you on the first page of Google search, I'm going to tell you that you can go and chase that rabbit, and one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to fail, or you're going to get your website suspended, and you're going to get deprecated by Google because they're not using correct techniques to do it. I've never seen anybody get to the first page of Google very rapidly.
Yeah.
And so, but people have this idea that things can happen, fast. And you're trying to explain to them that, it's not going to happen that way. And you always have to be honest with them. And if that's what the expectation is, I'll tell you, we walk away from a lot of business because of that. We do a very good job of vetting people ahead of time, or vetting targets ahead of time. And we come in with sort of a process that'll solve a problem that we see that they may not even know they have. And, we'll hit the wall, and we just don't, I don't have the time. I don't have the time, and I don't have the patience. So we just, we'll walk away. And frankly, we fired a lot of clients because it gets to the point where you're asking us to build your business, but you're not investing in it. You're just sitting back thinking, okay, sales should be coming. Well, you have to do something.
Yeah.
So
I've got a couple of thoughts on that. So one, for the person listening to this, looking at, influencers that are doing a lot of hype, the Mr. Beasts of the world, AI, leveraging PR, leveraging social media, the opportunity to be human and to be realistic with what you can help people with, and then demonstrate what that's going to look like for them, whether it's in a conversation with them or you put your tools in their hands. It's never been greater. So it's actually, this sounds like the silver lining, the jerky silver lining, but I love that more and more people are using AI in really stupid ways, because it lets me write well. It lets me have natural conversations with people. It helps, they remember that, oh yeah, that's the guy that I actually believed when I talked to him. So that I see it as an opportunity there. And then you said something about, that I wanted to react to as me. It'll come back to me maybe, but you said something about building your. I lost it, but maybe I'll come back to it.
Yeah. Well, no, what I was saying was, I think the expectation that people have is, even brands,
That's it.
Yeah.
And I've sat in that seat. So one thing I tried to do, remember I was telling you how I really disliked my job of sales. I've tried so many times to give that job away. I've tried to hire lead gen companies. I tried to hire tools, automation tools, ethical or unethical. I made plenty of mistakes along the way. I tried to hire full contract and full-time salespeople, but because I never did that job, and because I didn't spend enough time learning that profession and that role and what's realistic, I also had completely unrealistic expectations of what was possible for that person or tool or agency to be able to do in a couple of weeks, let alone, a couple of months. So I was constantly like cracking the whip, expecting completely unrealistic expectations. So I remember that I had that mindset as a buyer. And I try to always like help people see. I try to set expectations super clearly out of the gate. This is how it's going to work. This is when you can expect to have success from it. If we launch this product in 2025, you'll start to make money maybe 3 months in from it. You're not going to be able to retire for a long time from it, but it's going to point to the next product. It's going to upsell this coaching work that you do. Here's how I think, based on the money that you're making today, if you're able to sell X amount of these per month, here's what I can see to be a realistic uptick in your revenue 6 months in, 12 months in.
Yeah.
But you have to be, so like the hard part for a lot of people is they have to be willing to put in some upfront work where they don't see immediate ROI, which is just, it's troubling for a lot of entrepreneurs. They want like fast ROI. I need to know that this is going to work. And then also be willing to understand that it's not just the direct revenue that you make, but all the indirect revenue that comes from that thing marketing and selling for you. So it takes a little bit of education and patience, which my dad always told me. I was never blessed with a lot of patience. Italian American, I don't know if it's, he always blames my Italian American heritage. I just think I'm an impatient person. So I get it.
Well, the benefit of Crunch Growth, the benefit that we have is when we talk to people, whether it's, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's, Energizer Corporation, Kimberly-Clark, I don't care who it is. When we talk to them, we generally go at a high level because I don't go at a lower level. I'm not going to talk to the director of marketing or all them because they're not strategic. They're not thinking strategic. They're thinking about keeping their job.
Yeah.
And so, but when the benefit that we have is that I've actually built companies. And so I can sit there and tell you, look, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. And these are the steps we're going to take. And if you want business tomorrow, I can't help you. I mean, I'm not going to be able to get there. You can't buy your way into success. You can't you could spend millions of dollars on advertising. I don't think you get millions of dollars back in that advertising. And we always say advertising, ads are not the be all end all. Ads are a supplement to all the pieces you're doing. They're there to support everything else.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing these other 14 steps, your ads are going to be worthless. I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, a friend came to us and said, this company started up about a year ago. These guys are doing gangbuster sales. They're going to end the year at $1.5 million, $2 million. They were selling a product, physical product, which is right up our alley. I understand consumers like the back of my hand. We've been studying consumers for over 30 years. But anyway, we get on a call with the guy, and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm so frustrated because I need to get back to doing $150,000 a month in sales, and I need to get back to doing $150,000 a month in sales." And I said, so you were doing 150,000. If you were doing 150,000 in sales, I can probably get you back there because I can look at what you were doing and I can replicate those steps. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, usually we do a lot of research before we talk to a client or before we get in, before we sign an agreement because we want to know what we're getting into. But I took it at face value. It came to us through a friend. Well, we get in there and it was September of, 2 years ago. We get in there. And I analyzed his analytics and all this, and my folks are going, this guy's never done $150,000 a month. So we put it all together in a spreadsheet. I said, dude, where did you ever do $150,000 a month? We went back a year and a half. You've never done it. Mm-hmm. Well, we did it in blah, blah, blah. No, you didn't. You did $128,000 in sales. That was your high watermark. Mm-hmm. And that was your product in the springtime targeted at the right people. I said, so, you're on a natural pattern for e-commerce. So then we take over and, in the first month we do great. We're up, 15, 20% over what his trend was. We go into October, doing great. And I tell him going into the fourth quarter, going into November and December. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a gangbuster month of November. We're probably going to do $160,000, $175,000 in the month of November. December, you're going to die. Because you're going to have 3 weeks that are good. The last week you're dead. January is going to suck for you. So I'm preparing you now. It's like, December hits and we're obviously doing like, we just hit about 100,000. And then January came in at like, 80 to 90, and he's just freaking out. I said, what did you expect? Like, who's going to be buying your product in January? January's fitness month. It's health. It's rejuvenation. Why would they do this? And of course, he just lost it. I was like, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. I said, you got to find somebody else.
Yeah.
And, now he's just sucking wind. He's been through like 5 agencies. And anytime we get a client who comes to us and says, I've had 3 agencies in the past 2 years, that's the first red flag. I go, no, it's not for us. Thanks.
It's a good qualifier.
Yeah, it's not for us. So.
Yeah. No, that's so like, I like your story because I could imagine like you're coaching the business owner of a seat that you've sat in.
Exactly.
And so like my first business, I was good at the work. I did it in my career, but I wasn't really a customer of my own thing. And so I swore if I was ever going to build a business again, number one, it was going to be a business that just helped people make more money, because it's the easiest kind of business to build, I think, in this day and age. And 2, it's got to be a problem that I've solved for myself, because the scratch your own itch stuff, you should never just blindly build a company based on your individual experience and not talk to your market. That's a terrible idea.
Yep.
But if you start from your experience, you're like 10 miles down the road because you've walked a mile and maybe 100 miles in that person's shoes. So you can be realistic about them, because you probably, all the objections that you had, all of the false expectations, like all of the imaginary timelines that you make for yourself that never come true, you can just kind of like paint the picture for that person right away. And there, I think, me personally, I would trust that person 1,000,000 times over versus the person that's like blowing smoke up my ass about something that might happen. Or
we actually had a client very recently who we have a great product that is an AI based product that we use on Amazon to run ads, and it's better than anything and we've been using it for 4 years, and we get great returns, and it's great. But incrementally, it doesn't cost us a lot to add another client to it. And so this person came to us, and just to run their Amazon ads, which we usually are okay with, because it always leads to another part of their business, because they see what we do, and then it becomes running their Meta ads, Google ads, running, whatever, generating creative, whatever it is. So I'm not afraid to price it, correctly, but the price was $1,000 a month. And they thought that was ridiculously cheap, because everybody that they were out there getting quotes from was $3,000 to $5,000 a month to run. It's like, we talked about running ads, right? I'm not managing your account. We're just managing your ads, right? So yeah. And I said, well, let me explain to you how we do it, and maybe this will be clear. But they didn't take us because we were too cheap. I said, okay, that's fine with me. But it was amazing.
Yeah. I lost a contract once to Boston Consulting Group, because turns out my 4-person company at the time was 1/10 of the budget of them and McKinsey. And
yeah,
I was like, well, yeah, you can go and work with those guys, the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah. It's hard to do that. I mean, it's not like the other companies that were doing it were 800-pound gorillas. I mean, we're a bigger, we're a fairly large company in the space, but it's just these guys that are out there charging too much money for something that's simple, and they're doing it manually. And when you try and you can't, in this day and age, I'm sorry, you cannot run Amazon ads. It's too complex to do manually. If you have 1 or 2 products, yeah. If then you can do it manually. But if you have 50 items, 50, 60 SKUs, and you're trying to do that manually, it's just going to be a disaster. You need some sort of automation. And, we've tested so many different automation tools, and AI we've been using for years for different things. I love AI, but there's a time and a place for it. I'm like you, I'm not going to put AI in the phone call conversations. If we're talking to somebody, I'm speaking to them. I'm not going to put, an AI bot on there. We use it as a tool. We use it to analyze to analyze data, large amounts of data, which I think it does a phenomenal job with.
Yeah.
We use it to generate content. We don't use it to generate images because, to me, the images are just horrible and they don't resonate.
Yeah.
We still have a creative team. Do we use AI to maybe upgrade an image if somebody gives us a low quality? Sure, but we use it to generate. We use it to make our jobs more efficient, but we still have to have humans making it more effective.
Yeah. Yeah. And at least a human kind of in between you and the AI too, if you're getting started with it. Like even when I get through the work that I do with my clients, I have them go and do their own research and I show them how to use AI. There's just no good reason for a human being to sit and read transcripts and watch hour-long research interviews. Take the transcripts, take your notes, plug it into AI, ask it for the insights you're looking for, and you get these nuggets that you're like, holy, like you probably heard them, but you can't retain. If you talk to five customers, you can't retain that. So I teach them how to use AI to kind of like take our work and bring it into their product. So you're building the thing that your customers want, not the wild ideas that you thought were the right things.
No. That's a fantastic way to look at it. Well, Jay, it's been a pleasure. We're running a little bit out of time. We're
Sure.
got about 3 minutes left. So any closing concepts, ideas, anything you want to share? Because I think where it becomes interesting is the whole concept of productizing, because in my opinion, when you start thinking about it the way that you're talking about it, it becomes so much easier to market.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if you're building a business where you're going to be doing some kind of like service, you're going to show up and get paid for that thing. I think you should do that a whole bunch of times. I think you should build your reps, get really good at it. What's going to happen is you're going to hear the same question get asked, almost the same part in the process. People get stuck in an area of your framework or your onboarding or your intake, whatever it is. So you build a story into it, you add some templates so people get through it. And what you're doing actually by doing that work over and over again is you're learning how to teach people how to do it themselves. And all of the assets, all the guides, the docs, the spreadsheets, the worksheets, the things that you have people, so the intake form, all of those things are actually assets that you can start to package into your offer, so that what you do is you start to remove bits and pieces of your time from fulfilling the work. And now you start to put that out into the market. So what you've done is you've saved yourself hours twofold. You've taken parts of your time that you're actively involved with your clients, and then you're giving it to future clients so they can start to learn and see how you do the things that you do. And you start to build this sort of perpetual flywheel within your business.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, you're dead on, I think. So that's about it. We've got about a minute left, so we'll do a little closing. And I appreciate everybody showing up. I'm sorry we got tied up in the conversation and I didn't take the comments. We'll respond to them over probably tomorrow morning. And I apologize for that. And but we'll see you next week. We've always got some great intellectual people coming on the show, and Jay is no exception. So
thanks, Phil.
And how can people get in touch with you? How can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot. My website is profitladder.net.
Profitladder.net. We'll have all that information in the description of the show. And next week we'll still be doing some promotions, so you'll see some videos of Jay and some video clips out of the show. So if you need to get in touch with Jay, profitladder.net. Thanks again, Jay. And we've got to end it. See you.
Thanks, Phil.